Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's the Incredible Crash Dummies, brought to us by LJN. The Incredible Crash Dummies based off of the toy line of the same name, which are based off of the PSAs of Don't Be a Dummy, Buckle Your Safety Belt back from the early 90s. The Incredible Crash Dummies is a pretty typical action platformer with you playing as the titular dummies trying to rescue some of their friends. As far as an LJN published game goes, this is actually one of their more competent games, though it's still not an amazing experience and a bit weird. For example, a lot of times you can get hit by enemies and go flying like this, and you blow up when you hit the nearest wall. Thankfully, it still only costs you 1 health, and you can actually use it sometimes like here to speed through a little bit of an area, but just one of the weird things about this game. Your controls for the Crash Test Dummies, you actually have two different styles of controls. You have this dummy that, with the wheel that you're able to kind of like ride with, and it controls a little bit weird, you have to kind of get used to it. And then the other dummy is on foot. First level, pretty straightforward. We headed all the way over to the right, now we're heading all the way over to the left. Work our way up these tires, watching out for this enemy here, and working our way now over to the right side. Head underneath of these bouncing tires. I remember seeing all the commercials and the like for the Crash Dummies. I saw the toys in stores, but it wasn't something necessarily that I got into for sure. The game came out in August of 1994, so pretty late in the NES lifespan. Be careful not to fall down here, you'll have to make your way back up if you do. It is a little tempting with health down in the crevices, but it's just there to kind of tease you into potentially going down back to the lower platform. Over here to the left, bounce off this spring, you've completed level 1. Now we gotta go save Bumper, who was kicked down the sewer for level number 2. Now here we change up, we're playing as the other dummy, and you can see that we're on foot now. Here at the beginning, we're gonna ride up this bubble that comes out of the grate in the background. You do have a couple of different weapons. The main weapon that you have, you'll be able to like spray out at enemies and it stuns them. It's very efficient because then you can just walk through them. You also get projectiles via oil cans that you can pick up in the levels. Those are going to be useful for a few of the tougher things, mainly the like boss-like encounters that are in the game. Ride up another one of these bubbles and drop down the right side here. Continue over to the left, take out a few enemies to spray them along the way so you can make it through safely. Thankfully the game is relatively generous with health, there is plenty of it spread around the level. One of the most useful items that you can come across is the steering wheel, which will end up giving you invulnerability for a short period of time. Anytime you have that, just run through some enemies and get moving as quick as you can. It doesn't last too long though. Head over here, drop on down, be sure to grab the items and get some health as well as another invulnerability wheel, and run through a series of enemies. Be careful when you make it over here to the water, jump between the platforms, watching out for the fish enemies jumping out. Do the same thing you just did before, watching out for the fish jumping out. Watch out for all the dripping water droplets that are coming down from the ceiling in this area. Now for the boss-like encounter, we can see that Bumper is down there in the cage. We're going to head up here, working our way up the platforms, watching out for a few enemies. When you make it to the top, switch over to your oil can so you have your projectiles, and then get ready to take on the little mini boss. You want to aim for like the chest area of the boss. It can be a little bit troublesome to hit. Like it's the head and like upper chest is what you're able to actually land your attacks on. If you don't hit those two areas in particular, you end up just having your projectile go right through him. Not a tough fight by any means. Once it's taken care of, jump over to his side, grab the key, and then head back down. Just be careful of the enemies again as you do so. Once you get down, you have the key and use that in order to open up the cage. Onwards to level number 2, stage 1, inside of the big top. Start off by climbing up these platforms, heading over to the right side. One of the more annoying enemies in this level are these bombs that parachute overhead. If you run into them, they actually blow your head off. Anytime your head gets knocked off in the game, your controls become reversed. It's extremely annoying. Thankfully, you can grab health and get your head back, but still, it's something that's very annoying. Watch out for these enemies. You can go underneath most of them as they're making their jumps. At the top here, you have an elephant. You can hit the trunk using your weapon in order to stun it. I'm not sure how an elephant could fully hide behind that pole, but it's still amusing nonetheless. Sometimes with this dummy, you have to kind of get momentum before you make your jumps, and it can be difficult to get that momentum really quick in order to get enough height over some of the ledges and such. Here I grab the rocket power-up that boosts you for a bit, which you think would be useful, but honestly it just ends up being more chaotic. I usually end up losing my head pretty quickly and thus have to use the opposite directions that I want to. Thankfully though, that is the end of the area and we move on to the next stage. Now we have to crack this code. It's actually pretty easy. You can see the lit up switch in the upper left. All you gotta do is hit it, you jump up pressing the one button, and you'll be able to like grab a hold of it, and then just watch as the electricity moves between the various panels, and then keep hitting the switches until you've hit them all. Once you hit them all, go down to the bottom, hit the spring, and bounce into stage 2 of level 2. As you're making your way across the bottom platform here, watch out for the enemy that throws their head out at you and then kind of is moving back and forth afterwards. You also have the giant balls that are being spewed out from the background. Sometimes it can be hard to hit the enemies throwing their heads just because as soon as they see you, sometimes they'll end up launching it. Carefully move your way across the conveyor belts, thankfully picking up some health along the way. Here you can get another invulnerability steering wheel in order to help you through the next little area. The oil can will give you some more ammo anytime you end up picking it up. Thankfully, your spray, though, works very well for not only stunning the background giant balls, but also the bouncing ones as well. Grab the invulnerability wheel once again and just run your way through this corridor as quick as you can. Sometimes this game does end up slowing up with too much going on screen. Just be careful moving your way around here. Jump up and do little sprays as you move, and that way you can kind of hit the balls as they come out of the clown mouths. Just take your time, don't fall down that little opening there so you don't have to come back up the level below. Thankfully, we're coming to the end. Just be careful at the end of these boxing gloves. It's extremely annoying. I usually get hit at least once or twice during it, but thankfully right afterwards is the end of the stage. Level 3 Stage 1 is the warehouse. As we enter inside here, immediately go to the right, attacking the few moving vehicle enemies. These football throwing enemies can be extremely obnoxious anytime they end up showing up. One of the other items you can pick up in the game are these balloons, and they cause you to have, like, low gravity for a little bit of time. Those football enemies are extremely annoying, really hard sometimes to actually not get at least hit once. After grabbing the rocket, going pretty fast, gotta try to be careful in this area. Thankfully there's some health here. Still end up losing my head though as I bounce into one of the walls. Head inside here, you can grab an invulnerability wheel. Not something we're going to even be able to use much of though. You head over to the left side and then head up these boxes. Just work your way over to the left side. Drop down to the level below, you may potentially end up grabbing the rocket. Here I end up getting hit and sprung forward a little bit by one of these vehicle enemies. Here we have more football guys. Thankfully here it's a little easier to dodge them since the boxes you don't have to climb. You can just wait a second after they throw and then get in to hit them. If you're holding left against the wall here or against the boxes as you jump up, you can avoid the footballs as they go over you. Just be careful when you decide to jump up. Thankfully, we're almost near the end of the stage. Just watch out for the last few enemies. Don't get hit by these as they fall down as you go underneath. And go to the exit. The next level is the docks. This is an annoying little stage here. You have some water that you'll have to deal with. Just be careful when jumping between the platforms. The annoying bomb enemies overhead, the ones that are way high up, thankfully when they do drop their bombs, you should be able to get underneath them and avoid them. If you want, you can go from a higher platform and try to jump up in the air in order to hit them, but it can be tricky. If they do hit you and you lose your head, just be very careful when moving through the area. Thankfully, we will come to the end of the bottom area here, and now we can head up the staircase. Still more pits and all to deal with, so you have to be careful of them. Thankfully, there's an invulnerability wheel for a little bit of time. That way we can go through some of this area. It's so easy with the bombs overhead just to end up getting hit and lose your head. climb up this staircase, grabbing the health if you need it. If you're full health, go on and continue over to the right side. Thankfully, the bombs here are a little bit lower to the ground, and that way we can actually hit them in the air. Just keep moving, watching out for all these enemies. There's a lot of them, as you can see through the area. So many bombs as we reach the end of the stage. We do have a boss encounter coming up next. We're going to stay on the right side and just fire out our projectiles at the boss on the left side, throwing his projectiles. We can easily jump over them or focus on just firing at him, whatever you rather do. It doesn't take too many hits in order to make him drop, and then you have to work your way over to the left side and save our friend. Onwards to level 4, stage 1, car wreckers. You can see it's like a big junkyard, and a pretty common theme for the end of the game here. We have a few more little areas that we'll be going to before we face off against the final boss. Similar to the football guys, you have these enemies hanging out inside of barrels that can be a bit annoying. Watch out for the giant wrecking ball. It's very easy to get hit and crushed. Thankfully, it only costs you the 1 health, though. Some enemies will actually hide out as cones, so be careful of some of the parking cones. They may start charging towards you. Thankfully, there's some more health down here if you want to come down this way to get it. Head back, though, and head on down to the bottom area. And head over to the right down here. Up here, watch out again for another one of those giant wrecking balls that's moving quickly back and forth. Even trying to just back up a little bit to get enough momentum to get up the next ledge is enough for it to be able to swing and end up hitting you. Few enemies along this way as we're nearing the end of the stage. Just be very careful, move in between each one of these wrecking balls one at a time. It can be a little bit difficult with the dummy we're playing as. You can also run underneath of these wrecking balls, just kind of do a running slide to get underneath. There's one more at the end before we drop down the hole and move on to the next level. Next up is level number 5, the Junkyard, the final level of the game before we face off against the final boss. Once you make it here, watch out for the bombs moving swiftly back and forth, working your way up the platforms and then over to the right side. Be careful, there are some like acid pools that are set up, so be very careful of them. Once again, watching out for the very quickly moving back and forth bombs as you head over to the right here. Here we grab the speed up, as it actually is helpful for a little bit because we have a big open area, followed by a giant pitfall that we'll be doing. Right after that, you have some pits that you'll be jumping over with the acid-like stuff below us, so we want to be extra cautious when making these jumps. You can attack these enemies as you make your way up the staircase-like platforms. This crusher, though, can be a little bit difficult to actually get past, as you're unable to just straight up stun it. Keep working your way through the area. There's some health once you drop down the next ledge. Then head over to the right, doing pretty much more of the same of what we just did, until we come to a bigger open area. Be careful when you fall down here. It's a bit of a leap of faith as you land on the one platform. And right after that, you end up getting the rocket and potentially a balloon to get through the area, which can be difficult, especially with just the platforming you're trying to do. Wait for that right opening and then try to go underneath of it. If you get hit, just keep on moving. Thankfully, it's the end of the area and it's time for the final boss. As the level begins, there's some furnaces spewing fire that we have to try to avoid if possible. Leave out your smoke weapon and first go over to the boss, and you want to spray him and stun him. Once you spray the boss, then climb up quickly, bouncing off the tires, and then use your projectiles to hit this switch. Hit it for a little bit until he stops being stunned, then quickly go back down and stun him again and repeat the process. Do this as many times as needed until the boss is taken care of and you can enjoy the ending to the Incredible Crash Dummies on the NES. So there you have it, the Incredible Crash Dummies for the NES. Not the greatest platformer, but far from LJN's worst, that is for sure. Since it came out so late on the NES, I'm sure many haven't had a chance to even play it or have heard of it. But with that, it's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.